And a good spiritual morning to you once again. I'm Father Cosmas.
I'm Presbytera Michelle.
Thanks for joining us today for a quick chat. And of course, our morning cup of coffee.
Good morning. We hope you're having a very good day. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, and today we're talking a little bit about some advances in technology that were taking place recently in the news. Tesla and SpaceX. Have been in the news. Yeah. We probably all saw videos of that last SpaceX test flight where they launched the rocket up, and then it kind of came back down.
Incredible.
And then they caught it, right? They caught it in the sort of, I don't know what you call that thing, the landing sort of
the
gear.
Landing catcher.
The landing rocket catcher. That's the technical term, landing rocket catcher. And so it looks amazing when you see that. And then also Tesla had their sort of event, right? A Tesla event recently, a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
And they revealed some of their new products. And so they revealed their driverless car.
Yep.
Right. There's a car that they're like mass producing, no steering wheel, no pedals, no nothing in it. I don't know if it's meant to be a taxi or.
You're right. You're right. Somebody did. I wasn't sure about that either.
Or if it's meant for private usage.
Yeah.
Well, they were talking about it being hopefully when they're producing it like under 30,000, they said, right?
So you think it'd be private use.
And then they also had their van, their big sort of people mover type van thing.
And then the other thing.
The big thing was, though, the robot. They, sort of released their prototype of their robot, looking for those to be mass produced for private, purchase.
Yeah, you think you don't like that Siri thing or whatever, Alexa on your counter. Wait till there's a robot walking around in your house.
Right. So the idea that they'll be available for private purchase. I don't know. Was it the same thing, like $30,000? They were saying it might be.
I don't
initially.
remember. It just freaks me out.
Yeah, it's a little iRobot-y. It's a little bit, Isaac Asimov type stuff that we're dealing with now.
Sci-fi.
But it's real, right? It's becoming real. Like at some point, I'm sure it's not going to be initially, but they already do have them out. They exist for purchase. Mm-hmm. So of course they're going to be only for people with a ridiculous amount of money to be able to purchase.
Disposable income.
Right. But eventually it's,
everything comes down.
Yeah, they're going to make the price more affordable, and they're getting to a point where they want everyone to be able to have their own robot in their house, sort of like helping them with regular, sort of while you're at work, your robot cleans your house or walks your dog, or I don't know, does whatever.
The laundry, who knows? Yeah.
Right. And so just
where do we go with this?
All of this stuff that's happening between people catching rockets and putting robots out, advances in technology, they're happening kind of exponentially. And how do we react to that? And what do we do with that? How do we keep technology sort of in proper proportion to the spiritual life? Because I think it can get out of proportion. And so that was my first thought when I saw it. Well, my first thought was just kind of the SpaceX thing. Okay, great. You're making space flight less expensive. I
less
get that.
Garbage in the atmosphere and the ocean.
Okay.
Got it.
I see these as sort of minute steps towards something probably that we won't see in our lifetime. Maybe they're, again, trying to get to Mars and colonize Mars. I don't know.
That's a whole other video.
I get the concept of it. I don't know the reality. I don't know how realistic it is. What I wonder about is why they don't combine, it's only a matter of time before Musk sort of says, well, let me put my two hands together, Tesla and SpaceX, and why aren't you sending the robots to Mars? They'll colonize it a lot quicker.
Let them do it.
Let them go where you don't need oxygen and get everything ready for us to be able to be there. Why are you trying to send people there? What are people going to do there? Why wouldn't you be sending the robots there with your AI programming to get everything ready to send the people there? Anyway, at any rate, the robots scare me, not because of the AI thing, not because I'm worried that they're going to suddenly become self-aware and take over the world or anything like Terminator or Matrix but I can see, these are programmed and they all have satellite links. So it's easy to program them. You're right. So one thing I could see is who's in charge of the programming of these things.
Yeah. What's your worst nightmare?
Well, it's not a worst nightmare, but a very possible reality. Look, we had a lockdown in our lifetime now. We were told, no, you got to stay home. Can't go to work. No, you got to, no, we're telling you, you can't leave your house. Okay. Say I want to leave my house. Well, in the past, you ran the risk of getting arrested let's say, or getting a ticket or getting cited or something. Now they could just send a code or an algorithm to the robot that's already in your house that sort of says, you can't leave.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a little scary. I know I'm stretching a little bit, but we already have the technology to do that one. That's not anyone coming to life and being self-aware. That's just someone in charge sending an algorithm to a robot that already exists, which is...
I think as a mom, I'm worried that I see technology, I see beauty in technology. There's been some great things. We all know this. We've had this conversation before. I don't like the idea of fake people. I don't like the idea of robots communicating with my children, communicating with young adults, replacing real people, replacing real relationships. There's lots of jokes. You've seen them on TV. You've seen them on sitcoms where people think that Siri is like their friend or somebody that they want to talk to. Now we're taking it to the extreme, but we're just having a conversation. And I don't like the idea. We don't have a Google Nest. We don't have things in our house. I don't like it. And maybe that's holding me back on some benefits, but sometimes it just makes me uncomfortable.
And I think
I could be old-fashioned.
You have to, in your own world, in your own house, and I think for us as Orthodox Christians, this is what we're talking about. You're talking about, I hate to get all sort of business terminology on people, but you're doing a cost-benefit analysis, right?
Okay.
It's like, what is the cost and what is the benefit? So it's kind of like you're saying, there are already apps. You can go on your phone and you can already get an app for an AI companion, right? You can already go on there and program on your phone the picture of what you want them to look like, what their description is, and you can tell them what you want them to say. Now, this isn't really AI. I mean, it kind of is. Not really. It's just some simple algorithms that are working to create sort of a synthetic person that you can have a relationship with.
Yeah.
Right. Now, that person can have a body, sort of, quote unquote, it's going to be mechanical. But again, we're taking it to another level. And that's what I'm saying for us, having that cost benefit. Okay, what is the benefit of that versus what is the price that I'm paying? Am I teaching my kids, just play on your phone? And as parents, that's a temptation for all of us. It's easy to kill time on your phone. I can't tell you how many times we're at social events all the time, and we're at social events invariably at one point or another at a table at a social event, a wedding, a baptism, whatever. Everyone's on their phone. At one point or another, you see everyone there's 10 people at a table.
You're in proximity, but you're not talking.
10 people at a table are just going like this. And so it's kind of like, well, if for your kids too, what is the benefit versus what are you losing? They're losing the ability for human interaction.
Yeah.
They're losing the ability to do some reading facial cues, carrying on conversations. So in the spiritual life, you're losing that human interaction that is absolutely essential to the spiritual life, because in the spiritual life, you need empathy, right? You need compassion. You need mercy. You need to be able to give mercy and request mercy. And if you can't interact normally with people, or you're sort of putting a barrier, a synthetic, artificial barrier in place of that interaction, the more you do that, the more you're hurting your own ability to be merciful, to be compassionate, to be empathetic, because you're cutting down on the actual human interaction that you're experiencing.
Yeah, two things that I think of also, and they're different, but one thing is eye contact. And if you've had young children, that when you're trying to get them to say they're sorry or thank you, it's like, looking them in the eye, right?
Right.
That's something that a lot of kids are losing because they're on their tech. Even at school, they're on their Chromebooks, they're doing different things. But the second thing is, let's really, if we think about it from an Orthodox perspective, where do we find God? We find him in the stillness. We find him in the silence. And like you're saying, in and of themselves, a robot's not a terror, or like an evil thing, or, the speaker in your house is not an evil thing. But if there's so much noise and so much entertainment and so much feedback, there is no silence. Right. And there used to be a phrase that you don't really hear anymore when people would say, I can't hear my own thoughts.
Right. What thoughts?
So what thoughts? Because I am constantly, I want to fall asleep, but I'm not that tired yet. I'm going to listen to my music. I'm going to put on the TV. How many times our kids fall asleep with their earphones, or forgive me, their pods or their AirPods.
Earbuds.
I think that that's what scares me. And that, I mean, you guys know me, that I'm old fashioned that way. I would rather have the silence. I'd rather hear the wind and the birds. I'd rather use technology in good ways that I can.
Of course, we all do.
But I find there's a quote in there somewhere, isn't there? That the devil doesn't make us bad people. He just keeps us from doing good. Or there's a distraction to the devil. There's
right.
Keep them busy. Keep
Absolutely.
them busy. So
yeah, and I think that's two things that we're talking about. Yeah. One is we're looking where to find God. And so your point is you find God not in distraction, but in silence. In many cases, when we're not comfortable in life, when we find ourselves anxious, when we find ourselves down a little bit or upset, and when we're experiencing any kind of rough emotion, we look to busy ourselves. We look for noise because we look for distraction, because we don't want to be alone with our thoughts. But in the distraction, we're not finding God. When we're down and struggling and either upset or anxious or worried or depressed, that's where we're supposed to be seeking God. And finding him and letting him meet us and be with us and sit with us to help us come out of that, not create an artificial state of busyness where we can somehow put our heads down and push through it and sort of think, oh, well, I'm better. You're not better. You've just repressed everything and you've busied yourself and it's still there. You haven't dealt with it.
Push them down.
Yeah. So the one thing is we're trying to meet God. We can meet him in the silence. Technology can be noise and busyness and it needs its proper place. The second thing is, where do we find God? Not only in the silence, we find him in each other.
Yeah.
We find him in the eyes of the other person, right? We find him in other people, because if we learn how to love and we learn how to show compassion and be empathetic, that's the love of Christ. That's God's love. That's what we're fighting for and trying to learn. We need people for that. You can't find God's love alone. Like, you need interaction. And so we're picking on kids and parents, but I mean, the reality is how many of us as adults and beyond adults are just busy on our tech all the time. There are people that constantly are texting, and people that would rather text me or email me than call me because they don't want the interaction.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, I need the interaction in order to see where you are and how I can help. And I think that's something that we need to work on. So coming back full circle, all these amazing advancements in tech, which are just going to keep happening, whether we're catching rockets or mass producing robots, however terrifying it might be that's coming, the reality is we have to look at those two ideas. We have to find God in silence and not busy ourselves, and we have to be able to find God in others and not create artificial representations of relationships, but have real relationships with people so that we can learn the love of Christ and build the love of Christ and do that each and every day.
Amen.